Hey guys, my name is Jason with Mount Baker Mining and Metals, and today we're going on a little prospecting adventure. So we're up in the Cascade Mountains today. It's May, the snow's coming off, it's been a pretty warm spring. So I thought I'd come out to some of the local creeks and see if we can do a little panning, which I don't do a lot of. But figure we'd come out and try our luck. But what I'm most interested in is chasing some quartz float or some mineralized float up some of these creeks and seeing if we can pinpoint a spot where I can come back later and do a little prospecting higher up in the mountains when the snow gets off in June and July. But as you can see, first I got to get through this jungle and down to the creek. So as I mentioned, the snow is just coming off, and it's just coming off. we're like within days of the snow being out of here. I don't know if you can see down through the trees there behind me, but there's a little creek we're going to go prospecting in. But before that, I wanted to show you this real quick since we're here. This stuff is the Pacific Northwest cactus. Look at that. This stuff's called Devil's Club, and it is nasty. You don't want to get into it, and sometimes you can find patches of it like that. And because the snow is just coming off, it hasn't leafed out yet, so it looks like a dead stick, so you got to grab it, and ooh man, watch out. Well, here's our first look at the creek, and it's, like I said, the snow's melting off, so it's pretty high right now. But if you look across the way, this is all bedrock right here. And I'm looking right back up over here. There's a little inside bend right there, right in the sun. Some pretty good sized rocks on it. So let's work our way up there. I'm going to try and show you this on camera. I don't know if it's going to work, but up behind me, the river has a fairly nice straight run. And let me turn the camera around. So there it comes down. It's a nice straight run. Slams into that bedrock wall and takes a 90-degree turn. And there's this really nice inside corner here that we're going to try and work a little bit. And then it does another little jog there. And so my hope is that behind some of these boulders right in here, we're going to find some gold that sneaks into the inside bend and gets caught in behind these boulders. Now, some of the first places I like to look are in this moss stuff down here, because it's a natural miner's moss, and it's so wet here. We have moss growing all over the riverbanks. So when the water level gets super high here, it might be, 2, 3, 4 feet over my head when it's really rushing, and it'll wash a bunch of gold down the river. And on these inside bends, it'll trap the gold in this moss and behind these big rocks. So let's try the moss first, kind of act like a little bit of a sluice box, and then if we get some positive showings, we'll start working behind the rock. So I'm just going to work right in this area right here. Some of these bigger rocks out of here. And just skim the moss off the surface. You see that's just like the carpet of a sluice. So I'm going to take all that, wash it out in the pan, and then we can see if we have any gold. So when you're panning this out, you don't need to be in a real big hurry, but you can go a lot faster than when it's hard rock or concentrate, stuff like that we get off the shaker table. But the first thing you got to do is make sure it's all broke up and fluidized so the golds can get down to the bottom of the pan. Get these big rocks out of here. And you can just go pretty quick now, because most of this is just sand and light rock. Any dense pieces of gold are going to be down at the bottom of the pan. And one of our first indicators is going to be black sand. We should see that showing up here in a little bit. Doesn't look like there's a bunch of black sand in here, but that's okay. Let's see what we got here. So I think it's going to be hard to see on the camera, but there are a couple pieces in here. They're right up in here, and over here there's a piece. Let me get my new favorite thing out and I'll show you the gold up close. So this is one of my new favorite things. This is a microscope that I can put right at my camera and film up to 200 times power. So let me put it on. If you're interested in something like this, check out the link below. I got a link if you want to buy one of these. They're pretty cheap and they're really, really useful. So I've got the microscope on. There's our first little flake. And it looks like it's flattened out some, so it's rolled down the river. But I had to shake all the gold down to the center of the pan. There's another little piece right there, because I couldn't get my phone up in the corner in the crease. There's some more right in the black sand there. Now you're looking kind of right at the edge of the black sand. There's a piece of gold right in the center. Right there. A couple more little pieces there. They kind of show up as white because of the light in the microscope. But this works. Oh, there's a nice little piece. Over on the edge, I think you can see the gold color a little bit better. But this works really well for seeing these little tiny pieces of gold. Well, now I'm going to try here behind some of these big rocks. So let me get them moved and dug around in there and I'll show you what I come up with. I'm going to try and show you here what I'm looking at. And gold in a riverbed is like a layer cake. And so the gold, think of it like a layer cake where you have the cake and then the thin little layer of jelly between them and then another layer cake. Well, that's exactly what we're looking at here. And I've got this washed sand, really fine sand, washed down to about right here. There's a little layer. And I just pulled a boulder back, and then below that it's kind of muddy. It's caked in mud. See down there, it's all caked in mud. So this layer right here of the washed sand, right at that interface, is all the gold that got washed down the creek on the last flood, went to the bottom of that layer right there. So I'm gonna get all this junk out of the way. I don't need that. That doesn't have any gold in it. The creek is kind of gold panned the gold down to this layer. This was the bottom of the moving bed last time it flooded. And so all the gold should be concentrated right along there. So that's where I'm gonna dig, is just that little thin layer of jelly out of there and pan it and see what we get. Well, I've done a few pans in that hole and that didn't work out very well. So what I'm gonna try and do now is show you another technique. We're gonna try and get across to the river over here. And I think that's a bunch of moss sitting right on bedrock. So we'll try and do a little bedrock crevicing. Well, that was fun and exciting. This is where we were working. There's my pack. Now we're on the other side of the river. And we're gonna work this moss right here. But I don't know if you can tell, but there's moss growing underwater, about a foot underwater. And so the water level is really high and it's really, really cold. It's snow about 10 feet that way, as you saw coming down the hill. So we're kind of hamstrung a little bit because the gold is going to be the lowest it can possibly be because it doesn't, wash way up in the bank. But let's try and work on some of this moss down here, see if we can get down to some bedrock cracks. Let's see what we can find. So I've just taken a couple scoops out of this moss, and this is what I like to see. See this rusty layer right here? That means it's pretty old. It's been there a long time, and this bedrock's kind of soft on top. So hopefully, if there's any gold, it's worked its way down into that rusty layer. See it here, you can see it here. But that is sitting right on top of the bedrock surface. Well, look at here, I just flipped this back, and I don't know if you can see down there. There's a real rusty spot. I thought there might be a nail head or something in there, but it looks like it's where a piece of iron's just sitting on the bedrock. Might find a little surprise in our gold pan. little piece of nail or something. Well, I've tried a couple pans in our spot here, and I found a couple little tiny pieces, but nothing major. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to pack up from this spot. We're going to walk upriver a little bit and see what else we can find. So I want to talk about rocks for a second, and what I'm going to be looking for as I walk up this creek. It looks to me like there's two main types of rocks here. There's stuff that looks like this gray looking stuff. Looks like a metamorphosed sedimentary rock, like a metamorphosed slate. Locally it's called a phyllite. And so that's one type of rock we have. The other type that I'm seeing is this lighter orange stuff. It's a weathered volcanic or intrusive rock. So anytime you have intrusive rocks next to sedimentary rocks, a lot of times you'll find gold and some precious metals in there. And the theory is that these sedimentary rocks, they came off the seafloor, maybe they have precious metals in them, finely dispersed, and when they get buried near a subduction zone, you have hot fluids work their way through these sedimentary rocks, dissolve out those little tiny bit of precious metals that are in there, and then they concentrate them into faults and fractures through the tectonic plates and getting them pushed up into mountains. So it's really a good sign, and that's what you find here, is where you find up in this valley, where you find the intrusive rocks right next to the sedimentary rocks. That's oftentimes where you'll find those veins. But something else I found here, you see where they went. Can you see that? See the green on there? Looks like you have some of this maybe contact zone where they've metamorphosed some of these rocks. And so as I walk up the stream bed, I'm going to be looking for stuff like that. I'm going to be looking for stuff like this. Iron rusty stained quartz. And I'm just going to follow it up the creek as far as I can. And maybe if we're lucky, we can find something in the bedrock where the vein outcrops. Well, I got another creek crossing. Whoa! Water's getting fast now. Made it across. Not a bad view from the office today, huh? Look at that big guy there. That's one you might want to break open. Well, I wanted to pause gold panning for a minute here. I want to take a look at some of these rocks. I got two big chunks of quartz I found. So let's break them open, see what we can find here. So what I'm looking for is any sort of mineralization. These have been sitting in the creek for a long time, and so I'm expecting most of it to be leached out. But any little pockets or vugs that may have an indication that this held minerals at one time. This rusty pocket here looks kind of interesting. But that's the stuff you'd be looking for. Try this other one here. Pretty muddy. But I've been finding this stuff that I thought was pretty interesting. You see those little green flecks in there? See them on the end there? I don't know if that's copper. It doesn't really look like copper. But let's get these broke open. Let's look at this one here. Whoa! Look at that! What is that? That's very green. And it looks like, at first I thought it was a piece of metamorphic sedimentary rock, but now it looks like it's got a whole bunch of quartz in there, almost like it's a quartz vein. So that is an interesting rock right there. I might have to save that one. Quick update, I walked up the main creek quite a ways and I kept finding that green rock all the way up. And then I found this little tiny offshoot here, and I found that green rock in this creek. So that means that the green rock has to come from this drainage. So now I'm going to follow this up as far as I can and see if I can find where that green rock's coming from. But the problem I have is, look at this. How do you prospect in this? There's not a rock showing anywhere, and it's covered in huge trees. So I don't know how the old boys did it, but all I can really do is follow that creek up until I come to an outcrop and see what the rock looks like, because there's no showing here in the forest at all. One thing we do have around here is some darn big trees. Take a look at that monster. And for those of you who don't know, I actually have a second YouTube channel called S&J Forest Products. I'll leave a link in the description below. Go check it out, because I want to know what would happen if I took Fred a log that size. What do you think his reaction would be if I brought that up to a sawmill? Well, it just keeps getting steeper and steeper and harder to prospect in the creek. But I keep finding stuff like this with this quartz right up against this phyllite. A pretty well defined, let's see if I can get in the light, does that help? Yeah, there you go. Pretty well defined hanging wall or footwall, contact zone. But all that red irony stuff, good looking stuff, but this is what I'm dealing with. It's just pretty much rapids at this point as we go up the creek, and it's getting steeper and steeper. Well, I'm going to try and not show you every rock I look at, but this one was particularly interesting. It's got that bright red-orange weathering rind on it, where it's starting to oxidize in, which means it's full of iron. And then those little black spots there, maybe sulfides that are starting to degrade. It's in what looks like a quartz or quartzite matrix. It's got those little quartz stringers running through it. So again, good looking stuff, and we're still in that creek bed working our way up. I gotta get across to the other side. It's a long way down into rushing cold water. Don't slip. Here's a nice white piece of quartz I found and broke open. And I want to see what's in these brown rusty vugs. That one, this one has some nice ones. So let me put my little microscope on and we'll check them out. Well, it sure looks like there used to be some sulfides in there and they've been weathered out. Let's see if I can find another one. Yeah, that old orange rusty pockets of stuff. That's what you're looking for. So no gold, but we keep finding good signs. Well, I had to come up out of the creek bed because it was just getting too steep for me. And it's turning into kind of waterfall after waterfall here. So I don't know how much farther I'll be able to go up, but I'll keep going and see if I can drop back down into the creek and look for some more rock. But, you know, I'm in the same boat. There's uphill. There's no rocks to prospect here. This isn't Nevada or Southern California where it's all desert. There's not a rock on the ground anywhere. So really the only exposure I get is in the creeks. And when they go steep, it's hard to get down in them. Well, it's getting pretty nasty over there. Let me show you. Just waterfall after waterfall. So I think I might be out of room here. You might as well go to that waterfall and get a view of it anyway. I don't know if you can hear me, but that's a pretty nice looking waterfall, huh? Real pretty. Hey, what's that? You guys see that? You guys are not gonna believe what I just found. Holy cow. Oh, look at that.